welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the third part of making shoes, or in this particular case, ice skates for Second Life or Opensim. Now, I have to say that my shoe kind of reminds me of a bowling ball shoe. Now, for those of you who are wondering why I didn't just like extrude that and make it all the way down, well, I mean your ankle's gonna be there and you're gonna have an alpha, so there's no need to add all that additional stuff, which is why that's the case. So for the next part, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to work essentially on the laces. Now, in this particular case, the laces on here kind of, meh, but I'm going to go with more of a less traditional, where it's instead of the crisscross, you've got just straps over, mainly because it's just gonna take less time, and these videos already take quite a bit of time to even make, especially compressing them. So that said, I'm just gonna go ahead and go with that. So I'm gonna go ahead and start the whole strap parts, and yes, I'm still sick, obviously. So you're just gonna have to put up with my fabulous voice here. Now for this tutorial, I probably won't say as much in terms of what keys I'm using because, I've done that the past couple times and I kind of feel that at this point, well, if you don't know what those buttons are, you know, um, a hotkey sheet or something, um, you know, so that's pretty much it. So I'm gonna go ahead and do this. I'm gonna take this. I will be mirroring that, make sure I get rid of this face here. And for those of you who might be wondering, yes, I'm going to go over textures, I'm going to go over baking and shadows, and I'm going to be doing all of that. Just, kind of as an FYI here. So, uh, stay tuned for that, I guess. So now I'm going to go ahead and just kind of do my little fast forward thing so you can still see what I'm doing, but you don't have to listen to every part and whatnot. Alright, so now I know some of you might be saying, okay, well, these straps are kind of thin, they aren't necessarily as thick as the other one, whereas what it was before here. I went ahead and I'm just gonna go with this because I'm just going to do it. I was thinking about making some holes, but I thought, I'm not gonna for this tutorial. It will make it a lot longer, and I don't know. This is pretty much what I decided to go with. Now, at this point, I'm going to do something, and a lot of the time I do my mapping while I am modeling. You know, I'll map a certain part after I'm done with it. And you're like, mapping? What the heck is that? Alright, so, um, now there is a difference between a texture and a material. For those of you who aren't aware, they say texture and it's actually material. Um, it's not gonna bug me if whenever you say texture. A material is a combination of textures. When you look at a a 3D model, there's typically a few different type of textures, which is the diffuse, which is the main color. You have a normal map, which is basically your bump map, bump map. You would have in Second Life, basically a sort of a normal map or height map, and then you have the specular map most of the time, and that would be the shiny. What parts or what areas are shiny. So those are the three main ones that we're gonna talk about. Now those three combined together into what's called a material, and that's the end result of everything put together. But even if you just have one diffused texture, it's still called a material. So what we're gonna do is called UV mapping, and it will be showing you how to cut your mesh up to make a picture on there so you can put your texture on there. Um, for this particular case though, I'm going to go into edit mode, and right over here I'm going into the UV image editor, and I'm just going to press U for unwrap, and I'm going to press smart UV project and see what it does, which I figured it would do something like this. Now the map is pretty close, and you can go through and you can edit it yourself and go, okay, this is a little bit too close to this, or in my particular case I'm just gonna select it all and scale it down just a little bit here. And it does not create perfect maps, it does create pretty messy maps. Sometimes you just gotta go through and you just gotta clean it up, basically. One of the things you might want to do is kind of move things away from each other so that they're not touching. So I would recommend that. You don't necessarily have to, but sometimes stuff can overlay and it gets very frustrating. So you want to make sure that they're not touching. The one disadvantage to mapping like this is that you don't know necessarily, or it's harder to tell where things are. Normally, you could actually just go through and you could, if I wanted to, I could have duplicated all these at the same texture. Chose not to. And of course, you want to make the most of any map that you mix. You want to make sure that it covers all certain areas. Now, when you're doing this, you do not want to resize everything. Time you don't want to size it, and I'll tell you why. Is because mapping, it creates a sort of unified texture, right? Or unified material, I guess, if you will. That's way to explain it. I don't have a checker map. But a lot of times, if you Google and you Google 3D model checker map, you'll see that they put on a checker kind of a texture to them. Material, whatever. I guess I'm just gonna say texture. They will put on a sort of a diffuse checker texture. And then what they'll do is they'll look around the model and say, hey, you know where that checker is right there? That looks like it's a little bit stretched out, and so you'll try to adjust that with the UV map. I guess I can. Alright, so I'm gonna take this checker texture here, finally found, right here on my desktop, and for this particular case, I'm just gonna do it on this right here. I'll explain this part later. Now, as you can see, right now with the way that this is generated map, you can see how these are compared to this. Now if I went and I press that or whatever, and then I went over here and UV map. Now, as you can see with the UV map that I just created when it was a smart map, now you can see that the checkers are more aligned here, which is something that you definitely do want. Well, we're gonna go through and do things a little bit differently, but you can see basically. So um, this will work for our map, and we're gonna be doing this later. Now, one thing I do want to do is I'm gonna right click here and I'm going over here to where it says plane. This is over in the object data, and I'm going to name it shoe underscore base. And I'm gonna right click on this in object mode and go shoe strings, if you will. No, they're not technically strings. Alright, so now we got this, and it's time for us to actually make the blade.